Welcome back, welcome back. We are here for studio demo, for the folks who are here with us in person, for the folks on the live stream. Studio Demo is a broadcast hub featuring New Ink's wider creative community, where conversations, demonstrations, and exchanges happen live. Today's panel, Journals of Design, is a conversation between friends Ian Erickson and Christina Moushoul. While showcasing their experimental publications with a live demonstration, this pair will explore how their approach is expanding the material possibilities of publication making. Ian Erickson is the founding editor-in-chief of DISC, an experimental publication exploring media technology and environments through themed books, events, and products. Trained as an architect, his work spans buildings, software, and exhibitions with a focus on material systems and media cultures. Erickson has curated for the Pavilion of Turkey at the 2021 Venice Biennale, been a fellow at Rhizome, and exhibited at MoMA Warsaw, the Chicago Architecture Biennale, and the 2025 Venice Biennale of Architecture. Christina Moushoul is a designer, editor, and producer. She is currently the R&D associate at the Museum of Modern Art and the assistant editor and program curator at eFlux Architecture. She was a co-founder of the Design Practice Office Party and Party Planner Journal. You can head to demofestival.org to learn more about them and all that they do, but they're here today, so let's invite them up to the stage. Please welcome Christina and Ian.
Okay. We situated?
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the invite. This is really a pleasure, I think. Christina and I have been friends and fellow travelers for a number of years, sort of coming up, writing, editing, and participating in different student publishing ecologies, and eventually starting our own journals. And as many times as we've overlapped, we've never really had an opportunity to kind of like compare notes and discuss, so we're happy to do so today. And I'll just jump right into it maybe. So I wanted to start by sharing this quote that's been really important to me in my engagement with publishing ecologies. It's from Michael Warner's Publics and Counterpublics, where he writes that a publication is a site where a public is formed. And what I found really exciting about this quote when I came across it is it's kind of medium agnostic. It doesn't declare that a publication is a book or a magazine or a broadsheet, but it kind of opens the door on many other mediums that a publication might take, from an event to other kind of spatial and time-based media, and like requires, in a way, like a degree of experimentation and play, which I think is an ethos that we both share. And I think the first opportunity I really had as a student to kind of like test out this form of kind of editing and publishing was during the tail end of the pandemic, when I was in Zoom grad school and the kind of boundaries of academic institutions eroded and expanded. And because of that, even though I wasn't a student at Yale, I was able to guest edit an issue of their student architecture journal broadsheet, Paprika, with my friend Angela Lufkin and two graphic designers from the Yale Graphic Design MFA program, and also slotted in a merch collab, as you'll see, with Boot Boys Biz. And so the publication, as all Paprika issues do, took the form of a broadsheet newsprint printed by the same printer that prints the Yale College Daily newspaper. And we sort of wanted to hack that format by laminating very directly the kind of content of the issue, which was fashion. So looking at how both architecture and clothes kind of like shelter and condition and perform like stylistic communication for the body in different ways. And so we turned the broadsheet into a piece of pattern making paper with the alphanumeric grid behind and then the sketched pattern of a t-shirt above. And so contributors really took this on in very exciting ways. Here, a contribution from Annie Liu, a New Ink alum, who had done a project around trans pregnancy wear for trans masked people who are pregnant, and so tailored a kind of suit for that purpose. As well as the indigenous net artist Skawanati, who's on the Rhizome board, who did a piece around indigenous fashion in cyberspace. And And because of the way in which we tried to kind of like perform the theme through the formatting of the issue, there was also this really exciting opportunity to like cut up the piece of pattern making paper and quite literally turn it into a t-shirt. We were inspired by the Italian sportswear brand CP Company's Transformables collection from the early 2000s, where a jacket could turn into a tent or a kite or something like this, and so the broadsheet newspaper becomes a t-shirt. And we took this a step further with the help of Kevin McCaughey from Boot Boys, who screened the issue at 1-to-1 scale on a series of vintage pieces of Yale merch, which we'll click through here, all of which we sourced kind of secondhand and upcycled from various thrift stores in and around New Haven in the Northeast, eBay, Etsy, etc., including jerseys and hats. And so in a way, the publication was expanded to include a set of all of these things, in addition to this thing, in addition to this new form of kind of like interactivity or performativity. This was taken a step further by an invitation to contribute to a student journal that Christina was editing at Princeton called Pigeon, where I, alongside two of my collaborators, revisited what had started initially as a drawing project looking at the unfinished National Monument of Scotland in Edinburgh, speculating on different ways it might be, like, quote unquote, recompleted through these kind of pneumatic follies. For the architecture fringe in Scotland, which resulted actually in an installation that was a series of AR filters that allowed you to kind of visualize spatially these pneumatic follies on site. And so for the issue, Christina had us write a very responsible academic scholarly essay, but we also got the opportunity to kind of experiment with the medium of augmented reality and how that might literally kind of laminate and spatially interact with the printed matter of the publication itself. So we had all of these kind of QR codes and prints of the AR filters, and then you can engage with the QR code and launch a Spark AR filter that ran through Instagram and sort of see the project come full circle, putting sort of, let's say, physical media and printed matter into the realm of the digital. And I'll maybe pass it off to Christina now to talk a little bit more about that issue.
Yeah, so I, similarly to Ian, got my start in publications working on the School of Architecture at Princeton, their student journal, which was called Pigeon. Sorry.
We're doing a little bit of a show and tell. Well.
No, you can
Okay,
go to the next.
Next, okay.
So I worked on a total of 3 issues of Pigeon, and for the last one, I initiated this collaboration with Kevin, who's the same person who worked on what Ian just showed, which was like the t-shirt and the screen printing onto the shirts. But Pigeon is interesting because it's left purposefully unthemed, which we try to kind of also play into the idea of the word pigeon. So we think of ourselves as like scavengers in a sense, where people submit to us writings or we commission them, but we leave it kind of thematically open and then hope that through that it kind of yields a certain like snapshot of the kind of current interests of the architectural field and discourse at that time. So for this issue, it was the 30th, so it was like a nice anniversary issue as well, which was like a good time to kind of do something new that the journal had never done before. So for the first time, we had a kind of compendiary issue, a zine that kind of came along with the main volume. If you go to the next. So as you can kind of might know from what Ian has already said, Kevin, who had this graphic design practice called Boot Boys Biz, they were really interested in sort of non-traditional forms of knowledge production and dissemination. So a lot of their work was about kind of capturing and gathering all these references and then printing them or arranging them on garments. So it would be shirts, bags, hats, anything like that, because they kind of, again, wanted to democratize access to sort of information and spread it through alternative means of dissemination beyond, again, what Ian was saying was like now you could think about a shirt or something as a publication. So with this, it fit well within the kind of idea of Pigeon because it was very much operating through this kind of hypertext format where it was this kind of constellation of references, of images, of quotes, of other thinkers they bring together, and through this constellation that kind of yields new meaning, but it's also not super prescriptive. Each reader can kind of select their own series of references of ideas and draw their own kind of conclusions. And then we also had them design some nice totes, which we can show later in the show and tell, but yeah. So following my work with Pigeon, I also worked with Aaron and Ian Besler, who have an architecture and design practice, and they were working on this book called Best Practices. Go to the next. So this was a project that Ian Besler primarily developed while they were living in Los Angeles, and in his time walking and exploring the city, he would notice these moments of interventions in the built environment that were done by what you would call would be like a non-expert, but he was kind of interested in challenging that kind of prescription of someone who's not an architect as kind of a non-expert, and kind of bringing that kind of expertise actually into the discipline. So seeing the ways in which people who are not trained, as architects, make design decisions, make kind of interventions in the built environment, and exploring those. So for many years, he was taking these photos, and then at one point they decided they wanted to make a book about them to sort of celebrate and explore them further. And the way that this worked was, it was sort of meant to feel like as you were flipping through the pages, you were actually like kind of scrolling. And there was this idea, again, of sort of like embedded references, or like a footnote and a footnote and a footnote, almost like kind of like drop-down menus, like you were expanding text. And it was a really interesting and fun way of researching, and I really enjoyed working on it, because the idea was just to kind of take the image, whatever kind of reference comes to mind when you look at it, and then just keep exploring it. Almost also like a Wikipedia, like deep dive or spiral, when you just click and all of a sudden you've gone from like A to Z and you don't know how you got there. So it's also interesting to see the way a publication can take cues from also digital languages and ways of navigating.
Cool, yeah, and I think, like Christina, we both had a lot of experience kind of writing and editing for other people's sort of containers, if we can think of a publication or institution in that way. And eventually we both found it necessary in a way to start our own thing. And so for me, that was a publication called DISC. We've now done 3 issues. I'm the kind of founding editor. My friend Betty Wang is the design director, and then we have a very expansive advisory circle of people that include architects, media artists, and beyond, and we've partnered with a lot of really exciting institutions here in the city and around the world, as well as guest editors over our past few issues. And we started, as is kind of good to start a publishing project, with the name, in this case DISC, and so for us we really liked how DISC implied a kind of shorthand for things like discourse or discussion, both of which are kind of useful for a publication to foster, but also like implied the figure of the disk, a kind of floppy disk, or like an early form of physical media that had like digital implications, let's say, which is a hybrid I think we're both kind of interested in, as well as the kind of enduring figure of the disk as a kind of geometric figure. And so for us, it was important to set out a kind of mission at the beginning, written out here. So we're an experimental publication, quite explicitly, that explores media, technology, and environments through themed books, events, and products. We're editorially independent. We're guided by an ever-changing advisory circle. And we kind of develop projects collectively and collaborate across any and all formats. So in a way, there's an idea about like subject matter, mediums, and then how we work together as a kind of collective. And so the first issue was themed protocols, and it began with this sort of call for proposals, which was looking at the kind of wanting to get under the hood, let's say, of the kind of spreadsheets, algorithms, rule sets that kind of undergird contemporary practice. And so we had a range of contributors who investigated in the issue, which took the format, or let's say borrowed from the language of kind of office bureaucracy, recalling a kind of manila envelope, investigating that subject from a lot of different angles. People like Virgil Abloh and Safia Noble contributed both essays, but we also had a series of kind of like inserts and sort of extra forms of printed matter, which introduced newer forms of kind of like discourse and bodily engagement with the publication. And it ended with what's called a magic eye print, which sought to kind of investigate, let's say, the protocols of vision. And so what this is, they were very popular in the 1970s, and if you stare at the image long enough, a 3-dimensional kind of ghost image jumps out. And we worked with a media artist based in Ohio called Curtis Roth, who made this web app where you would kind of scribble a doodle, and then he had come up with a code to, kind of embed that image three-dimensionally into the print, and then after you purchased one, you would receive the previous orderer's drawings. You were always trying to see an image that a stranger had drawn, and it became a kind of very difficult but also like intimate and exciting kind of way of interacting with printed matter, which led us into our second issue, which was themed intimacy, which kind of reflected on the state of the world at the time in 2022, a little bit post-pandemic, of the kind of state of widespread estrangement we found ourselves in, digital and otherwise, and trying to kind of come back together and produce new forms of intimacy, either up close or at a distance. And so in this case, the publication took a format kind of like this, which attempted to put forward, let's say, like, I'm sure we're all familiar with Donna Haraway, but like a carrier bag theory of publishing, where not just the printed matter of the book itself, but a sort of intimate bundle of a bunch of other artifacts that were auxiliary to, as well as like essential to the publication, all snuggled together in a bundle. And so I'll click through very quickly some of the formats those took, slipped right within the spreads kind of their associated pieces, including a magic hand towel, Polaroids, a Jean zine by Elizabeth Henoff, who's a new ink mentor right now, where you would go out and produce a new form of intimacy with your immediate urban environment by collecting bio samples or like cultures on the zine, and you would mail it to her, and in her lab at NYU, she would kind of cultivate them. Ending with a contribution that equally was launched by QR codes, as the earlier example I gave, by current New Ink member Wendy Yan, who might be somewhere in the building, but who fulfilled the promise of kind of AR filters relationships to printed matter, in this case with a kind of more intimate front-facing camera, engaging with her and the reader's own faces. And so the publication was all of these things, in addition to the book itself, as well as a scarf as a kind of item of merch that we took on alongside. Looking at the garment care tag as a medium of kind of like publishing discourse. Taking us to our current issue, which was themed enchantment, wherein every contributor got their own cover or kind of got to be the cover star. Some of the spreads. We also similarly expanded beyond the printed publication itself, launching a perfume, somehow a publication that you can only smell and not see, and a series of launch parties here in Berlin at Floating University over last summer, as you can see on the right, engaging also with imaging technology like blacklights. And on the left, a launch party that just happened, say, a month and a half ago at ETH in Zurich, which similarly took on an expanded set of spatial media, edible arrangements, and kind of scenography. And so on that note of like scenography and spatial design also being a form of publishing, I'll pass it back to Christina.
Yeah, so I was in New Ink 2 years ago working with, or on behalf of this practice I had founded with two colleagues called Office Party, and through Office Party we organized 2 of the DISC launch parties. So for the intimacy issue, we had you can go to the next, yeah. We did one in New York and one in Los Angeles, and playing with the theme of intimacy, we were trying to think of how we could use these 2 different cities and spaces to inform the kind of like idea or concept behind each of the parties. So we wanted to explore 2 different forms of intimacy through them. So in New York, it was kind of the loud party, and then in Los Angeles was the quiet party. So the idea being that when you're in a loud space, you have to often to talk to people, get close, get intimate, get into their get into their personal space, whisper in their ear. You're exchanging kind of air, you're exchanging sweat, and so it produces like a certain type of intimacy. So in the space we created this kind of like apparatus that had within it like lasers, projectors, fog machines, speakers, everything we could do to create a loud in as many different kind of sensory sensory kind of approaches way. And then in Los Angeles, for the quiet party, we made this table that had a lot of like sound absorptive materials, and then we had put up like a curtain around it as well to just create this space that could absorb as much sound as possible and create, again, this kind of different form of intimacy when you're at a very quiet, a very small kind of dinner party-like space, and you again are speaking in kind of very intimate ways. And then with Office Party, we also launched a publication called Party Planner, which similarly to DISC, I guess the name kind of came first. So we came up with the name Party Planner, and then we decided we wanted to make it real because of that. So it was a journal. We did 3 issues of it, and it was part personal journal and planner. So it had like calendar pages, and then it had like weekly pages as well, and then it had one solicited contribution per month. And so the idea was that, I mean, we were, again, like trained as architects, trained in the realm of design, and we wanted to, in one sense, get kind of architects, historians, theorists to kind of think critically about parties, but also get people who work in the realm of parties think critically about space and architecture, because architecture is often something that's super rigid, it's super prescriptive. Architects want to have a hand in every aspect of kind of the design, whereas a party naturally kind of rebels against that and is something that is inherently collaborative, inherently produced by a group, and inherently uncontrollable. So we thought that this kind of produced a productive clash in ideas and wanted to kind of put them together to create this critical discourse around it. So we did 3 issues. The first one was the theme Party Favor, which was one kind of a joke, because in order to launch this issue, we needed to ask people to do us a favor and to trust us and to be willing to embark on this journey with us. But it also was about the idea that parties naturally rely on collaboration. They rely on people doing each other's favors, this kind of aspect of community. So here's a little sampling of some of the contributions we had. For example, Sylvia Lavin, who's a great architecture historian and theorist, interview Ben Kelly, who designed Hacienda Club in Manchester, which was really interesting. Yeah, and many other great contributions as well. Also, like Lady Fag is a really big party planner promoter in New York City, and we had her draw like plans and spatial diagrams for how she thinks about the spaces of her parties, which was really cool to see. Here's just like a quick sampling of what that looked like. It has cocktail recipes as well. Go to the next. And then, again, just another taste of some of the content. And then we also got to display this issue at the Hammer Museum as part of their Biennale Made in Los Angeles through LACA, which is the Los Angeles Contemporary Archive. They had this installation or this exhibition called Break Room, where they converted the break room into an exhibition space. Party Planner fit in well there as something that's kind of about archiving the ephemeral, archiving recording thoughts, thinking about parties, and then but also as like office stationery. So it fit in nicely there. Our second issue was After Party, which was, again, really about this idea of like archiving and challenging it and thinking about what comes after the party, what's left behind, what traces, residues does it leave, how can we also use that to challenge notions of how we think about archiving more broadly. Again, here's another kind of sampling of some of the contributors, of many like new people here as well, and some examples also here as two, and a closer look. And then for our last issue, it was called Party Trick, which was the idea of kind of reframing that term and thinking about parties as tricks themselves in the way that they are able to radically kind of transform a space and produce a really specific feeling and experience through these kinds of infrastructures of light, of sound, of smog, of folk, and what did I say? Smog. Wait, smoke and fog.
You made a new form of spatial effect just now.
Smoke and fog. Yeah. To kind of transform space. And this was a really fun shoot we did where the idea was people wearing fake tattoos. And so it was kind of like before and after the party, where you would see that like you would flip the cover from front to back and the tattoo would kind of dissolve, and so it's like kind of revealing the trick of like a fake tattoo. And yeah, so here is an example of some of the people that we had, and then as well as a kind of,
Sorry.
a sampling of some of the contents.
Cool. We were hoping to do a little bit of a show and tell, but I think we're running up on time. Let's see if I can get the 4-finger slide. Oh. Okay. Do you want to just
Quickly, yeah.
yeah, stack up your pile and I'll stack up mine and we can wrap? Vaguely chronological. We're architects, so we're building a tower. Thanks so much.
All right, let's give them another round of applause. What a beautiful tower.